Hello and welcome to episode 131 of the Reds Unrestricted podcast. I will be your host for this one. My name's Dan Clubbe. I'm joined by Chris Coughlin for this one. Chris, how you doing, mate? You good?
I am good. I'm good. Always good after a night where the Reds emerge victorious one way or another.
Yeah, that's it, mate. I was actually at the game last night. I don't get to go as often as I used to with work commitments and what have you now. But we're obviously here to talk about Liverpool beating Fulham 1-0. And obviously, listen, not the most swashbuckling of performances from Liverpool, but it had its moments, and we'll talk through those moments as we go along, I'm sure. Before we do so, Chris, I'm going to come to you first for your 3-word match review, please, mate.
Yeah, those 3 words are quite simply wins a win, because I think that's what a lot of people will probably have said after that. I didn't hit the heights of Sunday, but not every game can do that, of course. And it was a game where Liverpool just had to get over the line. There's a genuine discussion to be had off the back of the game as well. I saw Dave Comerford say on Twitter, the debate between who's Liverpool's player of the season between Alisson and Salah. I mean, and I replied to it by saying that it's very rare that a player with 29 goals and counting, isn't talked on as nailed on. But you do wonder where Liverpool would be without Alisson, and it was another crucial game from him yesterday. What I will say, I've said it a few times, but it's worth reiterating. Something Alisson has never been in Liverpool's shirt is busy. And yesterday was another example of him having to be busy, to be alert, to be the best version of himself in terms of the basics for being a goalkeeper. But ultimately, it's a game where 10 years down the line, I don't think anyone will be remembering or reminiscing on it, but you get the 3 points and you move on.
Yeah, 100%. And it's actually what you've touched on there kind of lends itself nicely to my 3-word match review, which is finding a way. And it's actually something that Liverpool haven't done enough of this season, if we're going to be honest. Like when we played not at full tilt, we used to win games of football not at our best. And we've lost that entirely this season. Like we had to be amazing to win, otherwise we just didn't win. But just recently and last night especially, we're not quite at it, but we still get 3 points and we move on, and that's crucial because you don't get in the top 4 without winning games like that, quite frankly, and you definitely don't win titles without winning games like that. I think that's pretty evident now based on, like I say, what's happened this year. You touched on a really great point there with Alisson and Salah. We'll come back to that a little bit later, but before we do, this was another game for me, Chris. I don't know if you agree. Where, I mean, I think Trent was voted man of the match officially by the club on Twitter after the game. Do you agree with that stance? There was a couple of standout performers, but was it the Trent show again for you?
He was good. There was a part where he collects the ball from Fabinho and does a nice pirouette in the middle of the park, and I think that showed kind of the confidence that's really grown within him, really, in terms of that role, in terms of expressing himself in that role as well. I don't think it was his best game since he's played in that role. I think he was still able to spread the passes, but I think the first 20 minutes, actually, or the first 10 minutes maybe, he threatened to actually score as well, didn't he? So he threatened the forward side of that play. But in terms of who really stood out for me, I have to say, there were parts where Van Dijk made some crucial interceptions, some crucial interventions, to almost redeem himself from more hesitant moments against Tottenham. I know there was the part where he battled with Vinicius, which was actually a lot more of a battle than I expected it to be honest. And again, Alisson bailed him out on that occasion, but there were occasions where Van Dijk defended really well, especially late on in the game. So I thought that was one of his better displays. I was disappointed in the role of Kostas Tsimikas, but then I saw it pointed out later on, how much has he actually been educated in terms of the new system? Because Robertson has had to change his own role with regards to that. And I thought Tsimikas starting last night was the right decision, because I thought Robertson had a particularly poor game on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And with the Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday turnaround, I think there were always going to be one or two changes. But again, I think it was an example of him not particularly being used to the new system or what's expected of him in that system, given that he's probably meant to be a little bit more tucked in, just with Trent now playing the role that he is. And it was funny as well because Darwin Núñez, of course, me and Dave mentioned that he hasn't been starting games, and I think I don't know about you, Dan. It was a funny old game from Núñez yesterday. Of course, won the penalty, controversial or not. Ultimately, Diop gave the referee a decision to make, and I think that's something that has to be said. But then there were other parts where you felt Núñez was almost trying too hard, but then you felt he was maybe a little bit rusty. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, I do think that's fair to say. I'd describe his performance as full of endeavour, full of effort, and lively, I think are probably the words I'd use to describe it. Because like you say, didn't lack in trying, was desperate to make something happen. Ultimately does make something happen, like you say, with the win of the penalty. But there were moments whereby he looked a little bit frustrated. He made some runs in behind and the ball never quite came for him. There's a moment where he did have sort of half a chance, like a glimmer of an opportunity in front of the goal, and he almost slips and sort of scuffs his lines a little bit with it. And then probably, unfortunately for him, the standout moment of the game, apart from winning the penalty, is when he tries a step over on the left-hand side of the box and leaves the ball behind.
Yeah.
That is probably the moment that will live longest in the memory. Certainly of rival fans, like we just kind of laugh at it and move on. It's Darwin Núñez, what will be. But we already know rival fans are queuing up to sort of have a pop at the sign of Darwin Núñez. And he's just very raw still. He really is. And I thought he might have settled down by now. Obviously, we're coming into very much the home straight of the season. I thought he would have settled. I think he's not been helped by. He looked like he might have settled early this season, but now we've shifted system all over again, and Cody Gakpo's come in, so he's probably not been helped by that because he looked like he was finding his way, and all of a sudden Diaz, Jota's back in form, Gakpo's involved. We've changed formation. He doesn't quite know what to do again, so it's been a difficult season for him. I think it's fair to say, but I'm sure he'll come good. I think you're right with Trent. I think he was really good. I think man of the match might be slightly kind. Obviously, Alisson, you can throw into that mix, gets his 99th clean sheet. Like, incredible effort from him again. Makes a couple of big interventions, keeps us in the lead late on. And also, Curtis Jones, I thought was impressive again. I was impressed with him, watching him. Certainly, first time I've seen him live in this new role. And I thought he was outstanding at it, to be honest, I really do. Off the ball especially. It's something I've noticed on telly, but watching him sort of bird's eye view, if you like, was even better. And Canate as well. I think you're right to mention Van Dijk, but I mentioned Canate in the same breath. I thought he was outstanding. So if I had to pick one of them, I might just go. Well, no, I might just go for Canate if I had to pick one of them. Genuinely, I thought he was superb. I really did. But anyway, we'll move on to it's the Salah Alisson debate. It really is. Absolutely. So you mentioned it a minute ago. Player of the season. We're very much in that. I guess they'll be voting for it now, and we'll be asked to vote for it very soon. Anyway, if you had to pick one right now, Chris, who are we saying?
I'll be honest. I don't think I didn't press the button when on Dave's poll on Twitter. I just stared at it. I was having this thought last night as well because I think one of the biggest things with regards to Mohamed Salah in the Liverpool fan base, arguably, can be sometimes how underappreciated he is, and I still feel that is still the case at times. Yeah. It's like you don't realise what you've got until it's gone, which is true with so many things, but particularly with Mohamed Salah, that really could be the case. It's like a lot of fans have reached the stage of just taking 20 plus goals as standard, as okay, whatever, he's going to get to 30 again, well, presumably in the last 4 games, but that is a brilliant achievement. The consistency is remarkable. He's got his penalty groove back. Hopefully, he does good just down the middle every single time, like James Maddison tends to do now. We all know. But there's so much to Mohamed Salah as well off the ball now in this new system. He's got to work back a lot more. I think on Sunday, the part where Harry Kane had the ball and he was looking to pass it, and Salah just came and nicked it off him. And that was brilliant. That was Salah's endeavour. That was Salah's work ethic. But I suppose the question that has to be asked is, where on earth would Liverpool be without a goalkeeper of Alisson Becker's quality this season? Mm-hmm. And there's an argument to say bottom half. There really is. Just because because he hasn't had nearly the amount of protection in front of him, that has lended itself to what I meant where I say he's had to be busy. He's had to make, I mean, I don't know the exact stats, but I would argue, or I would imagine it is either first or second season in terms of the amount of saves he's had to make in a Liverpool shirt. The only one I could imagine, I imagine he would probably have been quite busy in 2020-21 in the COVID season, the lockdown season. But it's such a tough one because I don't want to underappreciate Salah, and that's the kind of stumbling block for me. But at the same time, I'm about 60-40 Alisson because of the amount of times we've had to rely on him. I think there's been in the cup competitions, like say for Guedes' goal, Vinicius' second Anfield, there's been moments where Alisson hasn't had his finest hour. But in the Premier League, again, if I was making my team of the season, I think Alisson really is the only Liverpool player that's got a shout of being in it. I think. It's a crazy one, isn't it? Because a 29 goal season forward not being nailed on just says how much the keepers had to do. And also, Pepe Reina once said he didn't want player of the season, he still got it. So
Alisson might not want it. Yeah, he might. I tend to agree. I would just about fall down on Alisson. I think we are in danger. We are in serious territory of underappreciating Mohamed Salah and just how freaky he continues to be. Like, I mean, we've seen a certain Norwegian fella in Manchester do something even more freakish than Mohamed Salah's ever achieved. But we do kind of take it for granted just how amazing he is. Like, he does it again last night. Yes, it's a penalty, say what you want about that, but he wins the game. He wins the game of football. And given his recent penalty record, stepping up and taking and scoring a penalty is something in itself. But like you say, I think Alisson, more often this season, have we been indebted to Alisson for keeping us in football matches, or indeed winning us football matches, than Mohamed Salah. And I mean just. But that is the way I would kind of judge it. Like, for me, I've come away from more games thinking, thank God for Alisson, as opposed to thank God for Mohamed Salah. Like, Salah, he gets that hat-trick against Rangers, doesn't he? For instance, like in a rout, you know what I mean? Great boss, happy days. That adds to his tally. I'm not saying he's stat padding by any stretch of imagination, but I just think that is an example of where Salah's goals are boss, happy days, but they haven't won us that game of football. Whereas Alisson has won us games of football and indeed points along the way. So for me, it would just about be him. And I love him. I love Mohamed Salah. But yeah.
Oh, of course. I was thinking here as well, like about what you were kind of saying, really, about how many of Salah's goals are like won games, for example.
Yeah.
I think in the Champions League, there's an argument to say, despite the hat-trick against Rangers, I think some of his other goals were quite crucial in terms of being openers and stuff.
Of course,
so,
he's done it, yeah.
with regards to that, but again, when you think of the amount of work Alisson has had to do, put it this way, I don't think Liverpool will be anywhere near European contention without Alisson this season.
No, 100%. I agree with you on that. Just finally, before we have a quick look ahead to Brentford on the weekend, I wanted to speak to you about, it's something we've said quite a lot, I think, in recent weeks. A lot of people have been having the same conversations about, we've seen this new system now, this new way of playing, this Trent Alexander-Arnold getting involved in midfield, and it's working, I think it's fair to say. How much do you take in terms of optimism and sort of confidence from, A, the way we're playing in terms of this new system, this new style, this new formation, and indeed the performances that have come with it, and B, the fact that the results have seen an upturn as well, because whatever happens this season happens now. If we finish fifth, fine. If we finish fourth by some miracle, boss. But that will be what it will be. However, I think this little run of form now is more important for what happens at the start of next season. So how much do you take from it?
A lot. I mean, finishing fifth isn't nearly as bad when you consider it could be a day out in Dublin.
Well, God, yeah. I'm all for that now, all of a sudden.
The more I'm thinking about it, the more it just makes so much sense. 2015-16 was really fun as well. Yeah. But going into next season, I think you've got to have optimism as well. I mean, in terms of incomings as well, I think personally I'd kind of accepted. I know we'd all seen the Bellingham news. I hadn't kind of held on much more hope about that being a negotiation tactic or anything. And it looks, to all intents and purposes, like Real, I've got him, and you can't begrudge him that at all. If it meant like Alexis McAllister, Ugarte, another midfielder, and a centre half. I think that even if more players came in as well, but that would be a really good transfer window in terms of 4 core players. I think McAllister is extremely high up on that list, obviously. But in terms of the players at the moment, there's a lot of optimism. Absolutely, I love watching Trent in this new role. On Sunday when I was there, I just looked at it and thought he just looks like he's enjoying his football. He looks a lot less restricted. Although I have to say, I didn't know Willian was still that quick at his age, and I think you saw a few times when Trent had to go back into his right back role last night. There were still some of the doubts about that area, and that one of the things I know we mentioned to Dave about this. Does a right back need to be brought in, or does a Conor Bradley, does a Calvin Ramsey, do they need to be integrated properly, and then does Trent have to become an out-and-out midfielder for the system to thoroughly flourish? Because I suppose the one thing about this new system is just the amount of chances that can be conceded via it. It's all well and good creating chances, but it's a worry when you concede that many as well. And it lends itself, obviously, to Van Dijk having to do more, Konate effectively having to play 2 roles at once at the moment, which he is more than capable of doing. I think if there's any young centre-back in the world that could cover the right-back area at the same time, it probably would be Ibrahim and Konate. Mm-hmm. But that's probably my main concern in terms of I'd like to see the system in place with a dedicated right back, but of course that means taking one of the midfielders out. And does that mean Trent becomes a new signing in terms of a midfielder? I think a fair bit of the fan base might explode at the thought of that. But I think next season as well, Diaz will have a full season, hopefully no injuries. Jota again, hopefully will start the season fit. You've got Nunez again in pre-season from the first day. Hopefully, he'll learn from this season as well, become a better finisher. We'll have a full pre-season of Cody Gakpo, and just what he can do. He'll learn this role so much more, and he's already brilliant at the role anyway. And then I think additions can only help. I think because it's impressive, and Klopp has spoken so many times about the need for a rebuild, and you could argue it's maybe a year or two too late, but we don't know what assurances he was given over a certain signing that's got away and all that. But ultimately, you got to have optimism, haven't you? I'm not talking like title challenging at this stage, just because we don't know what City are going to do, for example, and they will, of course, be the team to beat again. I'm not discounting Arsenal. I do think City will win it now, but never say never for any Arsenal fans listening. But ultimately, new season, optimism. That's the way to go, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I make you right about sort of there is still teething problems, let's say, with this system, because you're right. We did concede a lot of chances against Fulham, who, credit where credit's due, came to play. Really, they were good. They played some lovely football at times. They caused us problems. Willian, especially down the side, we all expect, gave us a hard time. And we are going to have to learn. I mean, we conceded 3 at the weekend against Tottenham. If it's not for Alisson last night, we probably concede at least 1, perhaps 2. So, I mean, you're allowed a good goalkeeper, by the way, I should say at that point. But I think, there are still teething problems. And you mentioned sort of Darwin Núñez and Cody Gakpo having to learn in pre-season. We're probably going to have to learn in pre-season as well in terms of how we play this system a bit better and how we do limit those opportunities for the opposition, because I'm not having for a second that Klopp is going to be happy with Trent going into midfield and vacating the right back whilst we continue to leak so many opportunities. It's just not going to be the case. Yeah. I don't sit in a world whereby Trent goes into midfield and we sign a right back and one goes and plays it. I don't think that's the way this system works. I think it works as it does. It just needs to work better. And I think you're right on Konate. I think he is the perfect right-sided centre-back for it. My concern is, although Joel Matip did it brilliantly against West Ham, my concern is, he might not even be here next season, so who knows whether he can still do it. I do have long-term concerns about him doing it, and we haven't seen Joe Gomez. On paper, Joe Gomez will be perfect at it, because played right back, he's quick enough, he plays right side of a centre-half, so he would make sense. We just don't know yet. And on top of all of that, of course, coming right back, Canate, amazing, isn't shy of getting injured. I think that's probably the nicest way of putting it.
Yeah, it's not a perfect record, is it? I mean, I know I mentioned City in the last answer, but I think I have been watching them recently in terms of how they do it. And seeing John Stones almost as an attacking mid is just so strange.
I know.
But he's in the same way. I mean, Trent's range of passing is superior to most players in the league, but it's really strange seeing how suited John Stones is to it. And while I think Trent is incredibly suited to it as well, I think again he's probably still learning about it. I saw an interviewer say to him yesterday about maybe playing with a smile on his face, and I think that kind of lends itself to that. But it's just the defensive side at the moment, because it's almost kind of looking back to best part of a decade ago. Remember 2013-14 when it was under Rodgers, when it literally became a case of you score 2, we'll score 3, you score 3, we'll score 4. And that's a very draining way to play football and to watch football.
Yeah.
So the main part, as we both said, it has to be the defensive side that is focused on with recruitment, possibly, but definitely in terms of tactics and performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's not only a draining way to watch football. I think it's actually unsustainable if you want to be a top team. You don't win a lot of stuff playing that way. Like it's immensely very. I mean, they probably, I don't know why they sprung to my head. Obviously, we've got Liverpool sides down the years that have done it. Early Klopp, we played like that, and we didn't go and win a lot of stuff. Atalanta in Italy, they spring to mind because they were like that for a while, weren't they? Boss to watch, great fun, but you don't ultimately go anywhere with it because you just can't concede goals like that.
No.
We'll look ahead to Brentford anyway. Speaking of conceding goals, they gave us a bit of a torrid time at their place, set pieces especially. So, what are your expectations for this one? What have you made of Brentford's season as well? They've been very impressive, haven't they?
Very, very impressive. A lot of people probably went into the season wondering if they would have second season syndrome.
Yeah,
but they've completely, thrown any thought of that away. Superb season. Massive fan of Ivan Toney. To get 20 goals in the Premier League for a forward that's had his journey through the game is massive. Of course, there's the other side of his game and the other side of what could happen with him, and there's people have opinions on that front. But you can't deny he's just a wonderful forward, and quite rightly has got international recognition as well. Their defence as well. They've been quite canny in defence. Obviously, Ben Mee's had a brilliant season. Ethan Pinnock's come a long way from non-league to the Premier League and performing very well. Pontus Jansson, I know he's been injured for a lot of the season, but him and Zanka as well, they're both performing well when needed. And David Raya has been one of the goals. We talk about a lot about Alisson. David Raya's had an amazing season. I think he's made the most saves in the league this season. The midfield is excellent as well. Jensen, Norgard, two really good players. Jan Elt plays a bit less than he used to now, but still a great addition. And then the forward line, look, the funny thing was, for the game at Brentford, Toney didn't play.
No.
but Mbuemo and Wissa both had brilliant games. And Wissa's one of them. I think he'll be sort of like a Brentford cult hero by the time he leaves, because he doesn't play every single game. But when he does play, he does contribute really well. And Thomas Frank, quite rightly, is getting a lot of praise and talked about for a lot of other jobs. But he seems pretty happy and the job that he's done at Brentford. And I think for them as well, look, they're in the middle of London, where they've got, of course, Chelsea on their shoulder. Got so many clubs around them, but they've got a real community spirit, real spirit in the stadium as well. And for them to be finishing, likely anyway, above Chelsea, that's massive for Brentford in terms of how long they've been under Chelsea's shadow. I think there'll be a lot of teams that might be trying to finish above Chelsea before the end of the season as well. But I do think it'll be a very different game, because last season as well we saw the 3-3 at Brentford, which was quite similar in a way to this season, apart from obviously we didn't really seize control of the game at any point. But then the game at Anfield was quite straightforward, really. 3-0 win. I'm not saying this will be 3-0 at all. I think Brentford are better than that. But with it being at Anfield, I think that probably will lend more of an edge to it. And it's funny, just you mentioned about. I was just going to make a point quickly about the defensive side of things as well. You only need to score. With a 4, you score 2, we score 3. If you keep a clean sheet, you only need to score 1 goal to win a game. And that was the case last night. So another clean sheet would be nice. I think against a very attacking side like Brentford, that could require a bit of work in order to achieve that.
Yeah.
But I think as well, we've seen they do concede chances as well, and if the attack gets fully flowing, I think it could be quite an entertaining game. Really, I think you can see the best of both sides at Anfield.
Yeah, I've got a feeling you might be right on that. I'm sort of preempting quite an attacking affair because I hate the term on the beach. I can't stand it. But if there was a side that had a right to kind of be on the beach, it probably is Brentford, because they've achieved what they wanted to do this season and some. Like, their aim probably would have been, I mean, I'm sure Thomas Frank would have had higher aspirations than this, but for a side like Brentford, second season in the Premier League, their aim should have been to stay up and stay up comfortably, and that's what they've done and some. So they can afford to sort of take the foot off the gas, but I've actually got a feeling they'll just come and play. And because it doesn't really matter, they've got a freedom to them now. So I think we will see a real type basketball game, which should in theory suit us, because our quality should win out on that front. Like, when we went to their place this season, we were a shell of ourselves, quite frankly. Like, they bullied us that day. And we had a lot of warnings from set pieces before we eventually started conceding multiple goals from set pieces. So they're going to target that again, I'm certain of it. We just need to be tougher. And recent weeks, performances and results have shown that we have got a little bit of that toughness back. So I'm confident we can get the result. And the fact that they're coming with that freedom of knowing their season has been a success and they can go and enjoy themselves and express themselves, that actually fills me with slightly more confidence. Like, yes, they could be dangerous, but I don't know, I just think the way they approach the game just is perfect for us personally.
They're a side that, to me, because they are so good to watch at times, how do they go about playing a different way as well? Because when you average Avicii, there's no danger of relegation. They might want to try and maybe nick a Conference League spot if they have a good end to the season. Yeah. But even though that's unlikely, I think they are very much a side that could come and play well. And you alluded to it. I was going to touch on it as well. Just defend set pieces better, because I think that was arguably the worst game with regards to defending set pieces under Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah.
So just do that better. That should be the message.
Yeah, if we can do that better, I think that'll actually go a long way towards winning the game. Because, like I say, as much as it was a pretty even contest at their place in terms of sort of away from set pieces, it was definitely set pieces that won out in the end. Like, they absolutely caused us nightmares from them, and that's what won the game eventually. So, like I say, we have improved slightly in that department recently. And in terms of who will be tasked to defend those set pieces, do you expect to see any changes from last night? You mentioned earlier in terms of the schedule, it has been quick. It has been a quick turnaround. That ends after Saturday, really. We have like an 8 or 9-day break, because it's the Monday night.
Monday, yeah.
So we have a big break. Do you expect to see full strength for this one in that case?
I'd expect Robertson to come back in for Tsimikas. As I mentioned, I was expecting Tsimikas to come in anyway, based off Robertson's performance and the schedule.
Yeah.
I would probably say Jota from the start if he is over the back pain. Because I only say that just because Diaz has started 2 in a row. And it feels harsh because I would also bring in Cody Gakpo. But again, Diaz, I think he's not yet back to his blistering best, but you can at least see him. He's wanting to get on the ball, which is the Luis Diaz that we all know. He's not shying away from after injury. He's saying, give me that ball and I will try and make things happen, like he did nearly for Salah's chance at the Kop end. In terms of midfield, it's a funny one because, again, there's not too many changes I'd make in that department at the moment. And I probably would be tempted to stick with the 3 because I don't think Curtis Jones deserves not to play. Fabinho is the main 6, of course, and I sound like a broken record when I say we've been lacking in backup for him for some time now, and that would be a big pull of Ugarte if he did come in. And then, but it's whether Klopp just wants to go a little bit more adventurous or not with the likes of Harvey Elliott over Jordan Henderson. But I'm expecting a minimum of Andy Robertson, and then one or two changes in the front line. And yeah, it could be quite just an entertaining game, really. But ultimately, because you saw yourself last night. The defensive side last night, because Fulham had a lot of set pieces. That was at least an improvement going into the weekend as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and it's a much needed one, like you said. Brentford will pose bigger problems than that because they're a bigger side, and it wasn't just the physical element that we didn't cope with. It was the innovative element of Brentford set pieces. Like, they had all these different plans for us, and they really sort of worked on it. And they just bullied us, really. We didn't have a clue how to deal with it whatsoever. And that'll be crucial on Saturday to deal with that. Because, like I say, I think sort of man for man across the park, we're better than them. Let's not beat around the bush. We're better than they are. And if it's just a footy match, then we win it. But if we're going to defend set pieces as poorly as we did at their place, then we're going to have a hard time. So I'm certain Jurgen Klopp will be drilling down on that throughout the week. Obviously, it's a 2-day turnaround now between now and the game. And as for changes, I think Robertson's a shoe-in to come back in. I don't see any sort of qualms about that whatsoever. Midfield-wise, I'd probably just stick with the same, I think. I like Harvey Elliott, I really do. I'm just not sure Saturday's the ideal game to bring him into. I think actually starting last night might have made slightly more sense had he done it that way. But I think Henderson stays in the side as it was for Brentford. I think Gakpo comes in for Núñez again. I think we'll see Núñez drop to the bench. And I'm with you. I think if Jota is good to go, because we know he's carrying, I think it's a couple of knocks now with his back, and I think he's got something else. If he's fine, I think he's fine, then he goes. But if not, I wouldn't be against seeing Diaz for an hour and then Jota for half an hour if he's got it in him, because the other alternative to that, of course, is you go Núñez from the left, Gakpo centrally, and Salah from the right. That's another option. Just depends on where Diaz and Jota are fitness-wise, I guess.
Yeah, because, again, I know I said about Núñez not playing, but we talk about consistency, don't we? And I think we all want to see him succeed, and he does need that consistency that he hasn't had recently. So Núñez from the left, he might look a bit more natural in that regard, but I think he will have to learn through the middle at some point. But maybe this is the kind of season, even though opinions might change if Brighton beat United tonight, for example, and the top four becomes a little bit more than a glimmer. But if it is looking likely that it's going to be nailed on for fifth, try a few things. That's what this part of the season's for.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think that we've already seen signs of that, haven't we, with the aforementioned new system and stuff. We're definitely sort of looking ahead already, but that could well change. We might have to see 4-3-3 from if Brighton do beat United tonight, or even a draw, because Brighton themselves aren't out with that mix.
True, very true.
Yeah, they're fighting inside, they are. Anyway, before we go, I've got to ask you, I haven't hosted one of these for a while, but I'm going to ask you anyway, score prediction for the weekend.
Score prediction for the weekend, I think it will be quite an entertaining contest. 3-1 Liverpool.
Yeah, I think goals. I'm going to say this could be the worst prediction of all time. I'm going to say 4-2 Liverpool.
You know, I knew you were going to say it. I don't even know why.
Really? Yeah.
We've got this feeling. When you said random prediction, I just said 4-2. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a bit mad because I think I just think Brentford, they've got nothing to lose, and we're this side now that is looking relatively sharp in attack. Obviously, got loads of options in attack, but we are conceding chances at the back. So just sort of envisage this quite chaotic. I mean, we're not shy of a chaotic game at Anfield this season. Let's be honest. So another one to add to the list for this season. Anyway, it's been a pleasure, Chris. That'll be all we've got time for episode 131, I believe it was, of the Unrestricted podcast. We will be back to talk about the Brentford game and look ahead to that Monday night clash against Leicester. Relegation threat in Leicester as well, I should say, at that stage. But until then, it's been a pleasure. I will speak to you all again soon. Take it easy.